Hello chess friends and welcome to Untitled Chess channel and welcome to the Legends of Chess tournament in 2020. We have now the derby of the day, the most important match game of the day. It's Vishy versus Magnus Carlsen, so the former world champion against the current world champion, and we are now in game 4 in which 3 times the draw was played. So now who wins this game will of course win the match game. If this game ends in a draw, then we'll have of course the Armageddon game. So here Vishy plays with the white pieces. Let's check out now the game immediately. So here e4 played by Vishy, e5 played by Carlsen, knight to f3, knight to c6 and bishop to b5. We have of course the Rui Lopez, and now we have the Berlin defense with knight to f6. The idea is of course to challenge the pawn on e4 immediately, so here d3, and now most of the times the main line is the move bishop to c5. The idea is of course to develop the bishop because white hasn't played the normal lines with castling, then you challenging maybe black with the move rook to e1. Here bishop to c5, a perfect developing move, and now comes bishop takes c6. After d takes c6, okay, what we have gained here is a weird pawn structure for black. White doesn't have any more the bishop pair. It's of course an equal game, and Magnus Carlsen had his troubles against Vasyl Ivanchuk in this particular opening line, in this exchange variation of on c6. So I believe that Vichyanan has saw this game and that he can maybe make something out of it, because now the main idea of white is to go into a favorable endgame. So if this game goes into an endgame, then from this pawn structure point of view, you would have an advantage. But of course, with this bishop pair, you have to be careful in the game. And knight to d2 was played, and now bishop to g4 played by Carlsen. So here h3 played by Vishy, bishop to h5. It's similar like in this game between Vasyl Ivanchuk and Magnus Carlsen, and now knight to c4 played by Vishy, challenging immediately this pawn on e5. That's why knight to d7 has to be played. And here comes now this main idea, which Vasyl Ivanchuk also played. It's the move bishop to e3. When you don't have the bishop pair on the board, facing the bishop pair, one of the main ideas is to get rid of at least one of these bishops. So bishop to e3, a very important positional idea. And if bishop takes e3, knight takes e3 will happen, then we would remaneuver the knight to f5 and then knight to g3. This would be a very cool way to get out of the pin of this bishop, because we don't want to play this g4 move further, then we're weakening the pawn structure too much. In the game, Magnus played the move f6. Very important move to remaneuver the bishop here now onto this diagonal. In the game, queen to e2 played by Vishy, and now we have queen to e7. Magnus senses here that Vishy has prepared maybe some queenside castling here, so that's why he played also a flexible move with his queen, because we're waiting now where's white going to castle, because we want to see where white is going to castle. Then we're going to castle into that side, because if you, for instance, castle immediately on the king side, then I believe that white can castle on the queen side and challenge immediately with g4, h4, h5, g5 possibilities, even some pawn sacrifice just in order to open the position in front of the king. So very nice defensive strategy sort of by Magnus Carlsen. We have now queenside castling, as he Magnus Carlsen goes also on that line. Now the kings are on the same side, so no king attacks are possible immediately. You have to be more careful if you don't want to play something like c3, b4. If you weaken the pawn structure also in front of your king, it could be a problematic thing. So king to b1, king to b8, improving the position of the kings, nothing special so far. And now knight to d2. We have bishop to b6 by Magnus, and now knight to c4, bishop to c5. And okay, here Vishy doesn't want to go into a drawish line, doesn't want to do this repetition. He plays now this aggressive g4, which isn't a problem, because after bishop to f7 we have now knight to d2. The position is compact. All of these minor pieces of whites are perfectly glued together. The knight is protecting the knight, so both of them are protecting each other. This knight is protecting the bishop on e3, and one of our main goals from white's perspective is to get our knight on f5. We can also try the move f4 here to crack the position. In the game, Magnus played a very risky knight to f8 move, and here Vishy senses the position and has here, I believe, a comfortable game after the move f4. Here we have bishop takes e3, queen takes e3, and now after knight to g6 we have f takes e5. And here Magnus makes a slightly inaccuracy, I believe, because the better way he took with the pawn, the better way is maybe to try a blockade here with knight to e5 after potential knight to e5, queen to e5. You see, you don't risk this isolated pawn situation, but here Magnus takes with the pawn, has now really this isolated pawn situation. If this game goes now into an endgame, I believe that white is better, much better here. So although the engine will show you it's about equal, but don't watch these games only from this engine point of view. Watch these games from a practical point of view, with practical, really common human ideas. You see, when we face this position, isolated pawns, this pawn can be always attacked. So it's so far not a good position here by Magnus. And in the game, Vishy tried rook to f1. So of course, getting use of this open file, that's the only open file on the board. Now we want to have a competition on that file, of course, with the rooks. We have bishop to e6 played by Magnus, queen to g3. We have a rook to f8. Here it doesn't work to take the pawn immediately. Knight takes e5, knight takes e5, queen takes e5 will follow with queen takes a2 and the discover check, so you lose the queen. So far this pawn on e5 is not endangered, but in long terms it could be really a problem. Here knight to e3, we have queen to c5, and now after rook takes f8, here comes the critical moment of the game in which Vichyanan makes the main mistake. He plays the move knight to f5. It's of course a perfect move, but you have to prepare this move at least for one more move, because here the correct move maybe is to move a3, because there are these tactical threats with bishop takes a2. Here Vishy missed some tactics and played knight to f5. Very risky move here. Magnus senses this moment immediately and plays bishop takes a2. Incredible blunder by Vichyanan. I'm not sure why did he make that, because he had still more minutes on the clock. He had around 8 minutes in this particular position. Blundered really the pawn. After king takes a2, we have queen to a5, and now you simply lose the pawn. So, okay, white has of course this outposted knight on f5, but black can do the same. Here knight to f5 is also a possibility. Taking the pawn on g7, it wasn't a possibility even after before couple moves here. If you take knight takes g7, then this rook comes on f2, and we will have a queen and rook battery on the second rank. So this could be really a dangerous game. You can protect it, of course, but I think that this knight will come into the game with knight to f4, followed with maybe some knight to d3 tactical possibilities. So you don't want to invite your opponent's rook on the second rank. So that's why here Vishy tried at least some kind of counterplay with the move h4. We have rook to f7, and now h5. We have knight to f4. You see, Magnus can also play on an outpost. No pawn moves are possible here on e3 or g3 that could kick away this knight. So one of the best ways to play against knight outposts is simply get out of the range of the knight. So it means we could go with our rook here somewhere, getting really out of the range, not allowing this knight to create some attacking possibilities. In the game g5, played by Vishy, and now a5. This wasn't maybe the best of moves, but it comes with double function. Of course, the main idea is a4, a3 to get some kind of idea to weaken the pawn structure further after potential b takes a3, so the king then would be endangered to black's attacks. But the most important thing is here, after potential g6 move, after h takes g6, maybe h takes g6, then you're not vulnerable to this rook to h8 ideas. Then you wouldn't be checkmated, so you could still escape with your king. And if queen to g1 follows, then we'd have simply a b6 move and the king is perfectly fine. So a5, very nice move by Magnus, and we have now knight to e3, and here comes queen to b4. Here Magnus senses the immediate possibility to play a4, a3, splitting pawns in front of the king. As I said, the main tactical threat here. And in the game, knight to c4. Here Vishy played again. Magnus played again a4 without further retreating. He simply continued to push, because we have still the possibility to play first the move b5, deflecting the knight from the defense of the a3, and then to push the pawn on a3. If you take the pawn on e5 immediately, then a3 is immediate possible. Here there are also some ideas to counterattack the knight. So you see, after potential b3, queen to c3 will follow, and your knight is hanging. So it's really a bad position here for Vishy. So here, as I said, after a4, we have a g6, and now after h takes g6, h takes g6, and now rook to f6. what Magnus is doing here, he wants to stay with this rook on the f file. That's very important because of this next tactic that's possible. We have here rook to h8, king to h7, and now queen to g4. Again, a mistake by Vishy, but it's really a bad position anyway. It doesn't bring you so much because here Magnus Carlsen finds a really great tactic. He plays knight takes g6. Maybe a better idea here immediately is to play it's losing immediately, I believe, here for black, but every move for black is basically a good move. Queen to e1, after king to h8, we can play a very tricky idea, knight takes d3. After c takes d3, then we could again create this very, very nice battery here with rook to f1, and I'm not seeing good way how white should defend this. But Magnus, as I said, he took this pawn. It's not the best move, but again, it's a great tactic. At least we're creating new threats in the game. Rook to e8 was split, and now comes this same idea, queen to e1, king to a2, and now rook to f1. King to a3, here Vichyanan is trying to escape after a potential queen to a1 move, but now Magnus locks the king with the move c5. And in this position, Vichyanan resigns. So this was it because of this blunder by Vishy. Bishop takes a2. As I said, here in this particular position, a3, perfect fine move here by Vichyanan that he should have played. And believe me or not, here white has a comfortable game because, as I said, we can still play this idea, knight to f5, which Vishy missed only this tactics. Knight to f5, maybe knight to f3, knight to h4. So this knight will find a way into the game. The queen and bishop battery is so far not possible to create some dangerous threats here. So as I said, Vishy missed the tactics. I'm a little bit sorry because, also a little bit sad because I thought that this will go at least into this Armageddon game in which maybe Vishy has some chances. But okay, Magnus deserves to win now. He saw this very nice tactics with the move bishop to a2 and wins this match game. Now after two days, Magnus Carlsen has 100% winning game, so he has won both of these match games. So again, Magnus is playing really some brilliant chess. So okay, I hope that you enjoyed this game. I really enjoyed it a lot, but as I said, I'm a little bit frustrated that Vishy missed his tactics. Okay, if you want to see more games from this tournament, check out my previous analyzed games. Here's the link. And if you want to see the best chess games of all time that I've analyzed so far, here's also the link of that series. And if you like this content, you can also subscribe to my channel. See you soon with some more videos, and chess is the best, of course.